Last week, we talked about empowerment and the fact that the homeschool paradigm, or the self-teaching paradigm, as I like to call it, empowers both the parent and the student. But what's more empowering than having a standard and meeting or surpassing it? Do you remember the standard exams in school? I recall specifically number 2 pencils, test days, and strangely, the President's Council on Physical Fitness. I failed hanging from the bar, that part, at least once. Years after his graduation, my husband, fully grown and at that point a well-known fitness guy, ran into his old gym teacher. Since those previous days in gym class, the form of the standard sit-up had morphed into the new bent knee crunches that save your back from spasming. Kevin recalled all the fitness tests and standards. "Coach," he said, "remember those sit-ups you made us do with our partners sitting on our straight legs? Very bad." Things change. In fact, I'd argue that sit-up form, not the most. Schools and schooling have depreciated instead of improving. Sure, they've enhanced some things at school with fancy new gadgets, but by and large, our student performance is worse and tests are less rigorous. In fact, have you ever seen the 8th grade exam from 1912 that stumps even the 21st century test takers? Note how this exam is entirely essay. There's no guessing. It's alarming how far our educational standards have fallen, don't you think? Standards are only worthwhile if they are strong and meaningful. But we are geared, or at least we've been trained, to use comparison to determine how accomplished we are. And the best way we've devised to generate comparative studies is, you guessed it, testing. Now, don't misunderstand me, please. I don't think testing is necessarily a bad thing. It's a tool and it can be used to achieve good or not. But I would say that a system that relies almost entirely on testing for assessing proficiency or competency is faulty. For one thing, people test differently. I know. I was a terrible test taker. Tests simply stressed me out. In my organic chemistry class in college, I had a study buddy, Paul. We would meet at least once a week and do a late into the night review of all the information we knew would be on an upcoming test the night before. Paul struggled with the more complicated chemical formulas and equations, but I didn't. So I was often in the position of tutoring him just prior to the exam. I explained things to him, which helped me cement the information in my mind. Suffice it to say, I knew my stuff, and Paul could attest to that. But come exam day, in that great adrenaline-filled room with roughly 200 other students, my mind would blank. I distinctly remember sitting on exam day, one of these times, I think it was midterms, staring at my blank test form, completely unable to even write my name. By the way, Paul always aced his exams. And of course, he was always shocked to hear that I hadn't. "You could probably teach this class, Sam," he'd say to me. What on earth happened? I wasn't a good test taker. I didn't perform well under fire. That kind of evaluation stoked my adrenaline at that age, which inhibited my brain from normal function, put me into a fight or flight mode, even though underneath it all, I had achieved competency, if not absolute mastery. And these days, many teachers rely exclusively on multiple choice tests. Well, they are much easier to grade. And although it's an inadequate form of evaluation, what else can a teacher with 30 children in a class do? It's easier for the teacher, but it's also easier for the student. And expedience is only valuable when excellence is too costly. Luckily, in the self-teaching method, the education is tailored to the student, and therefore assessment can occur in many ways. The student presents his newly acquired knowledge, answers questions posed by his instructor, prepares a paper on the topic, revealing his proficiency. And of course, if the instructor is intimately involved with day-to-day instruction, then the instructor already knows to a large degree the level of achievement that the student has achieved. Obviously, those are just a few of the methods of assessment. I've said before on this show that the student will only learn what she decides to learn. You can cajole or threaten or inspire, but if the child doesn't want to learn, the learning is reluctant and quickly forgotten. The issue with testing is we are training the student to study for the test, just for the test. And the classroom devolves into the constant refrain of, will this be on the test? The child is incentivized only to learn the bare minimum because he is marching to the institutional drumbeat in unison with all the other automatons. There's a reason they called the newest iteration of renovation for the school's curricula Common Core. And it really is to make everyone common. So, how do you raise an individual? How does a parent embarking on this journey of discovery set standards? Well, first, there are 3 things about standards. 1, we set high standards to achieve high results. 2, there's this phenomenon called the soft bigotry of low expectations. 3, strict standards should never be an excuse for rigidity and callousness. You must set high standards, especially if you never lived up to them. That sounds odd, doesn't it? Remember, I proclaimed in a previous episode, you shouldn't burden your children with your own shortcomings. Right? So, if you didn't live up to some stringent standards, try not to allow that to color your expectations for your children. It's no reason not to imagine greatness from your kids. Expect the best, and you'll get closer than if you didn't. It's that simple. Set the bar high and watch them achieve it. Now, mind you, this is within the self-teaching paradigm. Don't attempt expecting a rocket science from your artist daughter. That's not her gifting. And don't saddle your rough and tumble little boy with cake decorating because you always dreamed of being a famous pastry chef. Well, that's just not fair. Your job is discernment and releasing your own inhibitions. I cannot draw much. I lack the interest. As a young teen, I tried drawing in earnest. For a full afternoon, I drew my self-portrait by looking in the mirror and concentrating on recreating what I saw. And when I was finished, you know what? I was pleased. With the exception of my left eye looking left and my right eye going right. I worked on it in the mirror, right? The face actually looked very much like me and a strange bit like my sister. I had accomplished what I set out to do, to just sincerely try. But in my efforts, I fully realized this was not my interest at all. I liked to work with numbers because they tended to be fixed. There was a singular answer to most of the problems, and that was, for me, probably a security that I appreciated. My artist daughter sees things exactly the opposite. She does not enjoy the solid resolutions in math and prefers to spend hours pursuing her artistic endeavors, which are quite impressive. Now imagine if I had said to her, math is where it's at and you need to know calculus by the age of 16, so here we go. Oh, how horrible. And what a mess that would have ended up being at home. Instead, I said to her, if art is what you enjoy, you should purpose to do art at least a half hour each day. Because it is her passion, she exceeded that, and all my expectations to boot. She still studies math, but the standard I set for her is high enough to challenge her without discouraging her. By comparison, I could never set standards for her artwork. She's never satisfied with it anyway, and I just gaze at awe in her talent. I will add here that when she shows me a piece for which she wants criticism, I tread very carefully.